Everyone says electric cars are the future. The government says it, car manufacturers say it, the ads say it. But here's what they don't say. Millions of people who switch to electric are quietly going back to gas. And millions more who were about to buy an EV stopped. So the real question isn't whether EVs are the future. The real question is, are they actually better right now in 2026 for you? Today we're cutting through the hype and breaking down the honest, data-backed answer. No EV cheerleading, no anti-EV agenda, just the real picture. Let's get into it. Here's the problem with most electric car videos. They either love EVs or they hate them. You either get a fanboy telling you EVs will save your soul, or a skeptic telling you EVs will destroy your wallet. Neither side is giving you the full picture. The truth is more complicated and more useful. In this video, we're going to compare electric and gas cars across 6 categories: cost, charging, daily experience, hidden costs, environmental impact, and long-term value. At the end, I'm going to give you a clear framework for figuring out which one actually makes sense for your life. Because here's the thing, the answer is not the same for everyone, and anyone who tells you it is isn't being honest with you. So let's start where every car conversation should start. On paper, the case for EVs looks obvious. Gas prices are climbing. In some states, you're paying $4, $4.50, even $5 a gallon. Meanwhile, the average cost to charge an EV at home is the equivalent of paying about $1 to $1.50 per gallon in gasoline terms. That's a massive gap. And for high-mileage drivers, that gap adds up fast. A driver doing 15,000 miles a year in a gas car that gets 30 miles per gallon will spend roughly $2,000 to $2,500 a year on fuel at current prices. That same driver in a mid-range EV, charging mostly at home, will spend somewhere between $500 and $800 a year on electricity. That's $2,500 to $1,700 in annual savings. Every year, over 5 years, that's $7,000 to $8,500 back in your pocket. But here's where it gets complicated. Those savings assume you're charging at home. If you're charging on public networks, especially fast chargers on road trips, the math changes dramatically. At some public fast chargers, you're paying 40 to 55 cents per kilowatt hour. For a large EV battery, a full charge can cost $30 to $40 for a 300-mile range vehicle. That works out to roughly $10 to $13 per 100 miles. A gas car getting 30 $30 per a gallon costs about $13 per 100 miles. Suddenly, the cost advantage disappears. Now add the purchase price. The average new EV in the US still costs more than its gas equivalent, though that gap has hit a record low in 2026. Some EVs are now within $3,000 to $5,000 of comparable gas models before any tax credits. The honest verdict on cost: if you charge at home 80% of the time and drive more than 12,000 miles a year, EVs win on cost, clearly and significantly. If you live in an apartment, rely heavily on public charging, or drive fewer than 10,000 miles a year, the savings are thinner, sometimes non-existent. The math isn't automatic. It depends on how you live. Let's talk about charging, because this is the #1 reason people hesitate on EVs, and it's the #1 reason EV owners either love or regret their decision. A gas car takes 3 minutes to fill up from empty. An EV on a level 2 home charger takes 8 to 12 hours for a full charge. On a DC fast charger, you're looking at 20 to 45 minutes to get to 80%. For most people's daily driving, commuting, errands, school runs, this doesn't matter at all. You plug in at night, you wake up with a full tank every single day. You never stop at a gas station again. That experience genuinely changes how people feel about their car. Owners describe it as one of the most underrated advantages of EV ownership. And this is a significant, but road trips are a different story. On a 400-mile road trip in a gas car, you make one stop, spend 3 minutes pumping gas, and keep moving. In most EVs, you'll plan 1 to 2 charging stops of 20 to 30 minutes each. Total extra time, roughly 40 minutes to an hour. For some people, that's a deal breaker. For others, especially those who use the stops to grab food, use the restroom, stretch, it's barely noticeable. Here's the important context. Studies consistently show that long-distance road trips make up fewer than 10% of most people's annual driving. The other 90% is local, and for local driving, the EV charging experience is objectively better. But here's where EV owners get genuinely frustrated. Public charging infrastructure in the United States is still inconsistent. Broken chargers, busy stations, charging speeds that don't match what was advertised. These aren't hypothetical problems, they're happening right now. In 2026, in real cities, the network is improving rapidly, but it's not there yet. The honest verdict on charging for local driving, EVs win. For frequent long-distance drivers or people without home charging, it's a real compromise that some people are not willing to make. And that's a legitimate position. Here's something. The spec sheets don't tell you driving. An EV feels fundamentally different. And for most people, that difference is a revelation. Instant torque. The moment you press the accelerator, you get full power. No hesitation, no waiting for the engine to rev up. A mid-range $40,000 EV will out-accelerate most sports cars from 0 to 30 miles per hour. And then there's the silence. No engine noise. No vibration. Particularly at highway speeds, the quiet is almost eerie at first. Then it becomes something you can't imagine giving up. For the daily commuter, the EV experience is genuinely superior. But then winter happens. This is where the EV story gets complicated, and where some owners get genuinely surprised. Cold temperatures reduce battery range. In sub-zero conditions, we're talking below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, some EVs lose 25% to 40% of their advertised range. A 280-mile range EV can become a 170-mile EV overnight. The physics are real. Cold batteries don't hold charge as efficiently. Running the heater draws significantly more power than running air conditioning in summer. Now, manufacturers have solutions. Battery preconditioning, heated seats that use less energy than cabin heat, better thermal management systems on newer models, and in a head-to-head on winter-starting reliability, EVs actually beat gas cars. No cold engine to warm up, no fluids to thicken. But if you live somewhere with brutal winters and you're counting on 300 miles of range to get through a storm, you need to plan. For people who use their vehicles for heavy-duty work, towing large loads, hauling equipment, off-road driving, EVs still have real limitations. Towing slashes EV range dramatically, and in truly remote areas, the charging gap matters enormously. The honest verdict on daily experience: for the vast majority of urban and suburban drivers, the EV driving experience is genuinely better, quieter, smoother, and more responsive. For extreme cold climates or heavy-duty use cases, the compromises are real and worth evaluating carefully. Let's talk about the costs that don't show up in the headline price, because this is where some EV buyers get blindsided. EV insurance costs more. The average EV costs 15% to 25% more to insure than a comparable gas car. The reasons are straightforward. EVs cost more to repair after an accident, specialized parts, specialized labor, and the potential for expensive battery damage and even minor collisions. The range varies dramatically by state and insurer. Some owners report barely noticeable increases. Others have seen their premiums jump by $600 to $1,000 a year. When you're calculating your EV savings, this number has to be part of your math. Out-of-warranty repairs. This is the hidden cost that concerns me most, and it's one that's rarely discussed. A dealership service manager recently pointed out something important. When an EV goes out of warranty and the battery system fails, the repair costs are often so high that customers simply don't fix the car. Battery cell replacements, inverter failures, power management issues, these repairs can cost $8,000 to $20,000 on older or discontinued models. With a gas car out of warranty, you have options. A network of independent mechanics, widely available parts, predictable repair costs. With an EV, particularly older models or models from manufacturers who are struggling, financially, you can find yourself with a car that's worth less to fix than to scrap. This is not an argument against EVs. It's an argument for buying the right EV. Specifically, choosing models from manufacturers with strong long-term support, commitments, and robust parts availability. We covered this in a previous video, but it belongs here too. EV depreciation is significant. Some models have lost 40% to 60% of their value within 3 years. The good news: this creates a spectacular used EV market. A 2023 EV with 30,000 miles that originally cost $45,000 can be purchased today for $22,000 to $28,000, and the battery is still performing at 90% or higher on most reputable brands. The honest verdict on hidden costs: insurance and out-of-warranty repair costs are real factors that erode the EV savings advantage. Calculate them up front. And we can't ignore the environmental question, because for a lot of people, this is the whole reason they bought an EV. Here's the honest picture. A fully electric vehicle produces 0 direct emissions, no exhaust pipe, no combustion, On that measure, EVs are clearly better for air quality in cities, but the electricity has to come from somewhere. If you charge your EV from a grid powered primarily by coal, the well-to-wheel emissions of your EV, accounting for power generation, are actually comparable to a modern hybrid gas car. Not terrible, but not the zero-emission story you were sold. If you charge from a grid powered by natural gas, which covers most of the United States, EVs produce roughly 50% fewer life cycle emissions than a comparable gas car. Meaningfully better. If you charge from renewable energy, solar, wind, hydro, the environmental advantage is enormous, approaching true zero-emission personal transportation. And then there's battery manufacturing. Producing a large EV battery generates significant carbon emissions, primarily from lithium, and cobalt mining and the energy-intensive manufacturing process. Studies suggest that an EV needs to be driven roughly 20,000 to 50,000 miles before it repays this manufacturing carbon debt compared to a gas car. For most drivers who keep a car for 5 or more years, that threshold is cleared comfortably. The long-term environmental math still favors EVs in most scenarios, but the story being told to the public that EVs are automatically zero emission is not accurate. The honest verdict on environment: EVs are better for the environment in most real-world scenarios, but the extent of that advantage depends heavily on your local electricity grid and how long you keep the vehicle. The picture is more nuanced than the marketing suggests. So are electric cars really better? Here's my honest answer: it depends on you, but not in the vague, unhelpful way people usually mean that. Here's a clear framework. An EV is likely the right choice if you have reliable home charging. You drive more than 12,000 miles a year. You rarely drive over 200 miles in a single day. You live in a mild climate or are buying a modern EV with strong cold weather management. You're buying a used EV from a reputable, well-supported manufacturer. A gas car is likely still the smarter choice if you live in an apartment with no home charging. You regularly drive long distances, 300+ miles in a single day. You're in an extreme cold weather region and range anxiety is a genuine concern. You need heavy towing capability regularly. You're buying a new EV from a manufacturer with questionable long-term support. Here's what I believe, having looked at the data carefully. The technology is genuinely impressive. The driving experience for most people in most situations is better. The cost savings are real for the right driver. And the environmental benefits, while nuanced, are real. But the execution, the charging infrastructure, the insurance costs, the depreciation, the out-of-warranty uncertainty, these are still genuinely flawed. The narrative is shifting, the market is speaking, and for a growing number of people, the EV equation is finally starting to make sense. But anyone who tells you EVs are better for everyone right now, without exception, isn't giving you the full picture. That's the honest breakdown. 6 categories, real numbers, no agenda. Now I want to hear from you. Are you driving an EV right now? Or are you holding on to your gas car for dear life? Drop a comment below, tell me where you land and why. If this breakdown gave you something useful, hit the subscribe button. We cover EV ownership, battery technology, and the real financial side of electric vehicles. No hype, just honest analysis. I'll see you in the next one.